All right, welcome to Rapid Fire Manufacturing. Today I'm joined by David Smith. He is the CEO of Robinson Helicopter. He has a strong track record in aviation and leadership, and right now he's guiding Robinson through innovation, reliability, with a sharp focus on practical design. Under his leadership, the company continues to push the envelope in performance, pilot training, and accessibility while staying true to what made Robinson a trusted partner for decades. So, David, thank you for joining.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Good to be with you.
So, what strategies are you implementing to advance careers in aviation or make it more appealing to the next generation?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is to tell the stories of what our helicopters do in the world. Around us, people depend on the food chain that provides all the modern conveniences of fish and beef and cattle and all, plus plenty of secondary things like grapes and cherries. And all those depend on our helicopters out in the world. We've never really told those stories ourselves, and our aircraft are uniquely kind of positioned in the food chain. So that's one of many stories that we like to tell and share with folks so that they understand that, if they find the world around them interesting, at the core of all those interesting things generally is a helicopter. And, we love to point those things out so it makes it more appealing, makes it more connected. It's not some distant thing that, they'll never encounter. It's a part of their daily life.
That's awesome. Now, are you guys implementing social media strategies to help also draw in the younger kind of demographics there?
Yeah, we've had some really good success with getting, once you have high quality visual imagery and video footage with intentional storytelling. We have a campaign called Climb Higher that we've circulated primarily through the social channels. We've got a great YouTube channel that's full of this type of high definition content that folks really seem to gravitate towards, energizing music and very compelling stories. So we do that and largely tell those stories through things like Instagram, which has been one of our largest social platforms and presence. It also happens to really connect well with our passionate influencers out there that fly helicopters every day all over the world. I mean, we've got some as far away as South Africa and Kenya. We've got folks that are in Chile and South America, and then a lot throughout the sort of Asian continent that need, they need to be shared. They need to be broadened. So we're doing our part to share their stories. They're doing their part to share ours. I think it's a great ecosystem of social collaboration for sure.
That's awesome. Now, what specific criteria does Robinson use to assess the effectiveness of some of the dealers that you're working with?
Yeah, so around the world, we have over 100 dealers and just went through our renewal this last year, right at the end of the year and beginning of this one. And, we put a lot of expectations on dealers about brand representation and about their involvement in the local economy that they serve. So trade show support and involvement in STEM education and education around pilots and maintainers in their region. There's a huge standard for holding folks accountable for safety. There's obviously in aviation, one of the biggest things we work on is the public trust, making sure that people understand how the aircraft both are operated in a safe and sort of neighborly way and similarly maintained in a safe way. And those are things we constantly have to be actively involved in. So we spend quite a bit of time on getting dealers and service centers, which is another 300 plus pure service centers out there. Make sure they're well trained, make sure they have equipment and tools, and make sure that as their rosters change and sort of people retire, which, the world has some demographic challenges of people aging and the baby boomer generation retiring out. So we have to maintain a high standard of quality for all those folks just to keep the level of safety that the public expects. Yeah, I wish the numbers favored us as an industry better, but the airlines, as they're staffing heavily, general aviation, which covers everything from helicopters and business jets, air medical services, things like that, pilot training, all those things are under a lot of pressure. And so, we think that, our unique role as the largest helicopter fleet kind of in the world from a civil perspective, we see that as an opportunity to leverage that and say, if you get trained to maintain a Robinson, you could have a great career and do all sorts of mission types and, any region of the world. You can travel and you'll always have a job. It's a great business. If you love aviation, you love working with your hands, being a mechanic engineer is quite a great career progression. But so it's partially our job to tell that story and share with others. But I think we face demographic challenges just because the numbers are staggering. The number of people who have been, in our industry for the last 30 years, but won't be there in the next 30 is a tough thing. So we do have this hard challenge of making sure that our service centers and dealers are doing the right things to get ahead. And when they can't, we still hold a high standard of safety. And so some of those folks in the service centers have to consolidate. Some of those teams will be fewer, but as at the same safety standard and commitment to quality that we expect.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the social media aspect too, showing those stories is so important because that's stuff maybe a lot of people won't realize. Hey, this is helping farmers. I mean, I especially see with firefighters too. I think telling that narrative will kind of get people more involved.
And it's becoming more and more, in every phase of life. So one of the things we're very proud about of last year's team, the customer base does many great things each year, but one that we stood out last year is we had a big hurricane in Western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene. And in that effort, it was mostly led by Robinson pilots, private owners that flew their personal helicopters in to drive relief work in very difficult to reach places that the big National Guard helicopters, the U.S. military really only has very large aircraft these days, Chinooks, Blackhawks, and those are not easy to fit on a front lawn or in the parking lot of a church. And so those things are better suited to helicopters like ours. And so they worked collaboratively with these big operations where maybe you had the Chinook drop a big load of equipment in, but they couldn't land. They couldn't let people out and support. So we dropped in special forces operators. We dropped in supplies and particularly medical supplies, pulled the extremely sick out. Those kinds of things our helicopter offers. When you think about the things that get people sort of motivated about a career, we have it all in helicopters. Sometimes it's helping your neighbor. Sometimes it's contributing to a really critical, important part of the food chain. Sometimes it's just doing the things that produce pilots for firefighting that are obviously generally larger helicopters. But as the R-88 takes shape and gets into service around the world, we think we can directly contribute to the prevention of fires and the reduction of the damage that big fires cause. So yeah, there's a lot of really gratifying missions that happen in light helicopters, and we're right in the middle of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to keep following the R-88. That was a cool unveiling. And to your point too, whoever shot that did a really good job because the music, the timing of everything was phenomenal.
Yeah,
but that definitely draws people in.
That just tells you the world is full of creative people nowadays, and so we got lucky that Los Angeles happens to be a mecca for that. So we had a lot of great collaborations in this area that we could draw from. So it was a great experience.
That's awesome. So sustainability and the future of helicopter manufacturing. There's that increasing pressure to be sustainable in aviation. What are some practical steps that Robinson is taking to make these helicopters more eco-friendly?
Sure. So there's a couple things that I think are important. One, in the base design of an aircraft, you have choices of materials. And I think not enough attention is put on the raw materials and the things that are needed to make an aircraft. In our case, we use a tremendous amount of simple industrial standard aluminums and steels, things that when you both cut them, form them, shape them, the byproducts are recyclable, are able to be used in follow-on production of other types of material that needs those metals. That's a really good thing. I think it's not the most easy, but in a product like ours where you don't want material to go to waste and have no productive use, which unfortunately some of the advanced materials people talk a lot about, carbon fiber composites, and some of the advanced adhesives that are used in those resin systems, those are not that easy to recycle, and they tend to have really, really difficult lives after the primary use. And so for us, we look at those as part of the design trades that keep raw materials in use and in circulation and all the byproducts of manufacturing, the cut materials from our mills and lathes, the byproduct of our water jets where we cut out the smaller sheet metal pieces. All that stuff gets recycled and has a lot of work that goes into keeping that flowing through the economy in meaningful ways. So trying to be sustainable in base buildup of material is one. We also try to reduce energy consumption in our factory operations and have calls routinely with ways we can reduce our dependence on the grid and on the consumption of energy there. I think the central thing people think about, and so there's all that buildup of how you build a business and how you build a helicopter that is places where energy is consumed and energy and material is oftentimes left by the wayside. So we do everything we can in those areas to be efficient, to be sustainable. The piece that people think most about is the ultimately how you power the aircraft and how you fly it in service. And that's an important part. So we've been investing in research and development. In fact, I just came from a meeting with one of our partners that does electric motors for aviation. The future is likely progressive from today. We burn Jet A, so jet fuel based as part of our turbine engines. As we progress into the future, you'll expect more of that to be hybridized. So you'll have scenarios that results in a reduced consumption of fuel per kind of flight hour. That is an exciting future, and it is right in front of us. Take some time to do the certification, make sure that they're safe in operation, but there is a great future ahead of us that is progressively towards electrification. We have a project in particular where we are using hydrogen fuel cells to do the very first vertical lift certified platform for, in this case, human flight that will carry critical organs that are a part of an organ development effort by one of our partner companies that is out in United Therapeutics network of companies. And we're excited about that because it has like the triple benefit, right? So it is incredibly motivating work, saving lives and helping people get back from debilitating organ failures. But then on top of that, it is a pushing the limits of sustainable aviation and allowing us to take a leadership role in that. And then it is also in the big picture, it's an exciting technical problem that fuel cells have been used in boats and marine work, automotive, in isolated cases in automotive, but it has not really been used in aviation, certainly not in a certification candidate aircraft yet. And so we want to lead in that. It's a hard challenge, but exciting stuff that will eventually lead to a zero emission capability that really it's been eluding us for many years. Very hard to get helicopters to hover, to get aircraft to take off and hold their position in the sky is really challenging physics. And we are on the cusp of some pretty awesome breakthroughs in that.
That's awesome. And I see too, just based on the future of automotive too, I think there's going to be some infrastructure that would line up nice with hydrogen. Does that do anything with the weight ratio or cost?
I think everything we're talking about in the first generation or even the second generation is likely to have some adverse weight hits. So why electric vehicles are a little bit heavier than their ICE counterparts, that's today's generation. And over time, we'd expect some of that to come down in automotive. The same thing will be true for helicopters and fixed wing applications, that they're just heavier aircraft to carry both the battery weight, the required certification, sensors and systems that help keep the battery and the motor systems healthy. The high voltage power distribution is a very challenging thing to both isolate and keep safe. So there's a lot of layers to this that all do generally result in a slightly more expensive and a slightly heavier vehicle. But I think that's, again, a generational thing that will come down over time. And, part of the story of aviation is everything is smaller batch. So generally a smaller total number produced. And so we don't have the same economics as automotive, but it's a similar challenge where, as we go from 0 to 5, that's still pretty low volume. But as we go from 5 to 500, you start to see cost savings and some efficiencies in weight where people can really invest in tools, invest in new materials, and you see things start to sort of snowball in the positive way. So that's all in front of us. We, as a company that's been around 52 years and, we're heading into our, deeply into our second 50-year epic, I think, we see the world in that kind of a timeline. And over the next 50 years, things are going to be very different. And Robinson's going to be in a lead position for that.
I'm already picturing, just someday hopping in a electric helicopter and going to get some groceries or something, or having them just drop the groceries off to me.
That's right. We also, one of the neat things we've done in the last year is we manufacture unmanned aircraft here in our Torrance factory as well. They're little helicopters. And part of the idea of that is that we can see the future evolving along several different lines. And so package delivery and things like that certainly would be a great opportunity for us to do it. But I see this model of, there's not enough housing in a lot of parts of the U.S. and many other parts of the world. And enabling a broadening of where people can live versus where they work can be quite good. And so I do see a hopeful future around mobility that we can play a role in. It will never be as effective as mass transportation solutions, and I think that's one of the illusions that comes out in investor pitch decks for startup companies and stuff. But for us, we look at it, in Sao Paulo has showed that to us, that that's one of our biggest cities for helicopter operations, and it's very heavily dominated by Robinson helicopters. And it is incredible to see how they've made the live and work much more accessible, much more broadly distributed across this huge, complex city with infrastructure challenges and traffic and all like. They do that with helicopters. And I think that's something that we continue to see as a motivation for more investment in mobility based on moving people to and from home and to and from work.
That's awesome. Well, David, I really appreciate your time. For those of you watching, stay tuned for more industry experts. Thanks, David.